I have never played Metal Gear before. While it is a franchise that in theory looks like it could be my thing, I just never really gave it a shot. That is, until I laid my eyes on a game that just absolutely enamored me, and the million memes that followed it. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. First of all, that is not a real word, thank you very much. It's not a stealth game following one of the 70 different types of snakes that you can see in the wild, but it's instead an action hack and slash game developed by Platinum Games. Now that's a bit of a shift in style, no? In case you can't tell, it really is becoming very hard for me to introduce the game properly, because how the hell do you even introduce this game to anyone?
And this is Metal Gear!
Like I said, kids are cool, Jack, and I love my
The game had a weird case, in which it received a resurgence because of the batshit insane memes that were coming out. Now, whether or not that was thanks to this video,
well, if it isn't Sussy Jack,
that's for you to decide. I wanted to play this game because of the music, but also because I wanted to see if the game was actually good, or if the memes were simply hyping it up and tainting the perception of the game. And after 3 hours of playing, yeah, the game is very short, I can come to the conclusion that, yeah, this game is hella fun. Okay, so what's the story here? A couple of years after Metal Gear Solid 4, it seems like the world is recovering and some countries are having some peaceful relationships with each other, but some people simply hate happiness and want to start war, because the war economy is normally better than the peacetime economy. So as the trusty, friendly neighborhood ninja cyborg Raiden does, he tries to stop the group of madmen and at some point just sabotage the future US election.
Is it normal to feel like I skipped a part of the plot?
From what I've played, this is definitely not the most convoluted of the Metal Gear stories. It's definitely simple enough to where you can play the game with no knowledge of the series and still have a blast, but I will say that when they started talking about the economy and restarting the war economy and anything that has to do with economy and war, I was just thinking back in my US history class and I just finished that shit, damn it. What I will say that I loved about this game is that it is batshit insane. Somehow watching the Maxor video somehow couldn't prepare me for how weird and funny this game truly was. The amount of over-the-top, unnecessary stuff happening at every waking moment was one of the best things ever. If this is how the other Metal Gear games are, then you can bet your ass that I'm playing them. I want more of this, thank you very much. There is a literal scene in which one of the villains is having a deep conversation with Raiden about memes. You're not ready for this game, you're not!
As we all know, however, the power of a good game relies solely and primarily in the experience provided by the concept of gameplay. So how does that aspect fare in the modern day of 2023?
The gameplay of Metal Gear Rising is comparatively simple when you put it against some of the other games in this sphere. However, I don't think that this is necessarily a reason for critiquing the game. While other games like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta have a bunch of different buttons and combos that are meant to make you not only stylish but also incredibly powerful, Raiden instead simply has to attack and to parry the oncoming actions of the enemies. All of this done with one button, by the way. And, I mean, you know, occasionally play Fruit Ninja, nothing major. The level design of the game, and really just the entire game, is not really that complicated. When it comes to a level design, most of it is just a bunch of hallways that you go through to get to your next objective, while occasionally jamming out to the banging tunes. And it's in these combat sections where the real meat of the game makes itself known. The combat system is something that I didn't know exactly what to think of when first beginning the adventure, as from the get-go it did always appear kind of simplistic, and I was kind of afraid that the game was going to become stale and uninteresting. But the developers managed to make the gameplay loop very entertaining and engaging for the entirety of the 3 hours. Yeah, I keep forgetting that the game is as long as Sonic Forces. How does that happen? As I said multiple times already, the gameplay is very simple because you only attack and parry and occasionally slice a pie. But it all feels so good! Attacks all have so much oomph behind them that it never stops feeling good demolishing an enemy, especially when you game the sub-weapons later on in the game. You only start with Raiden's sword, but eventually you will end up with weapons used by the bosses, which are all pretty fun in their own way and play very differently than the last, which in part does help the replayability of the game. My favorite weapon was specifically Sundowner's Scissors because you jump up a bit and then BAM! Combos are incredibly simple to execute. There's not a lot of unlockable combos that I remember getting, or maybe I just didn't use them well. Maybe I just maybe I was just bad at the game, maybe my dumbass was just pressing the buttons and hoping for the best, but because all the attacks have a certain weight to them, it constantly managed to keep the combo satisfying and fun to use. In my opinion, it's the best part of the game. Countering enemies' attacks and then counter-attacking creates a very addicting cycle in which you and the enemies are constantly blocking, countering, and parrying each other. I would be lying if I didn't say that a lot of that was because of the spectacle that the game throws at you. And I mean, one of the main mechanics is essentially just a slice of spectacle, damage an enemy enough and you can be like one of those anime swordsmen and slice the enemy to bits and use their electrolytes to heal yourself. Why is it called that?
You know, we could have just used a power this didn't need to happen.
A lot of the weight in the attacks are because of the hyper flashy animations, and the main selling point of the game is the flashy cuts that you can pull off and this and that and wild other flashy shit. But it really works? While the game is simple in its combos and its combat mechanics, it doesn't make the gameplay itself. The game is simple, but it is still challenging. You have to learn the mechanics of the game very well if you dare try to make it to the finish line, and you can't rely on healing items to let you brute force through the adventure. I think the best way to describe it is with the style over substance. Only in this case it will be that the game will give you the style if you manage to give it the substance. Which I mean kinda goes for most hack and slashes, but damn, that was a very good phrase. I'm saving that for another time. It's a curve that many other games strive to reach for, but believe me when I say that when you give the substance, this game will give you style for days. This is one of the goofiest games that I have ever played. In the first level, you throw a Metal fucking Gear, which in the Metal Gear series were oftentimes some of the meanest, baddest bosses around. But in here, you chuck that thing in the air and start slicing and dicing while rock plays very loudly, which culminates in one of the best intros I've seen in a video game. The pacing of Revengeance is one of the best that I have ever seen. Because the game is so short, the game becomes a 3-hour adrenaline ride that never really seems to pump the brakes, and I just loved it for that. That wasn't the only crazy part in the beginning though, because shortly after we get the same Metal Gear returning and now you end up getting thrown to the top of a clock tower and you have to run your way down the tower, jump on rockets and then finish off the thing! What is this game and why did it take me so long to play it? The next boss you meet greets you with this Resident Evil 4-ass chainsaw sequence. Monsoon is talking about memes and Sundowner is harkening back to the good old days of 9/11, what? The bosses are another big highlight of the game. All of the bosses are so incredibly fun and make excellent use of the mechanics. They feel like proper battles and can easily overwhelm you if you're careless, like how Sundowner can get obliterated until he activates his get out of jail free card. Fuck!
God, I want to hate him, but the music is so good!
This is one of the best soundtracks ever conceived in any video game ever. The amount of banging tunes that they put in here feels illegal. And not only do these tracks go crazy, but they also allow the player to look into and understand the motivation of many of its villains. Except Sundowner, he's fucking insane! His song is about how beautiful and pretty the scenery of war is. What is wrong with this man?
He is in fact the exception. Not because the other guys are lunatics, but because he is simply one step above them.
I really like that the music is dynamic. When you're fighting a boss, the only thing that you'll hear is the instrumental of the song, but as the song goes on, you'll find yourself listening to the vocals, which leads to fucking awesome moments. And if I had to rate my favorites, it would be Red Sun in third, The Only Thing I Know for Real in second, and Stains of Time in first. But this entire soundtrack does not miss. Hell, I'll go and say that this game doesn't miss. Except for the stealth, that's kind of bad, I won't lie. This game is one of the most batshit insane games I've ever played. A video game that by all means is simply just looking to have fun, and god damn it, that is very much fun indeed. After playing the game, I kind of find it funny how one of the bosses chats about memes, which back then meant more than the surreal shit that we laugh at today, instead being more used to define like an idea or a concept that's spread around, truly assimilating it into our culture. And I find it funny because that's technically what happened in the case of Metal Gear Rising. A game that spread around the internet thanks to memes and, why don't you argue, became part of the DNA of your soul. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I wouldn't say that the game is perfect. I cringe at the thought of doing stealth missions, and honestly the stages could have had a bit more to them, but I can definitely say that this is an experience absolutely worth having.
Well, that's all the time that I've had for today. I'm just a random stranger you met on the internet, but hey, just call me Pseudo.